Cauzality and Kumu, torn between two lovers, feeling like, and you sort of know how this line ends. To say that I'm invested in Kumu might be quite an understatement, as to date I've worked on hundreds of models in Kumu, and it's it's hard to describe these days what it is because it is the capabilities are so vast. I probably only use a small percentage of it these days because I only develop essentially maps of relationships and their implications. And Kumu has a whole range of additional features that I just no longer have use for these days, which is not a negative thing. I mean, it's considering the extent to which its user community is growing, there are numerous people finding it extremely useful. Though, as of late, I have been more and more, become more and more attracted to something called Cauzality because it has a couple of features that I think are just amazing. In Cauzality, it, in other words, part of what I absolutely love about Cauzality is that it's not over-designed at the moment. The programmers have not made it added so many features and functions that it has become complicated. Now, it's extremely useful in its simplicity, which is what I love. So to create relationships, if I click anywhere, I create an element, and we'll just call this A, because whatever. And you can go ahead and add measure and add notes to it. But the thing is, to go ahead and say that this has a relationship between something else, all I have to do is this, and we'll call this B, and we'll say that this relationship is the same, so that as A increases, B increases. And this particular relationship is such that if B increases, A increases, so this is same also. Now, notice that as I added this other connection, the connections turned into running ants. It turned into running ants because Cauzality knows that I've created a loop. And not only does it know that I've created a loop, it knows that I created a reinforcing loop, which is pretty awesome, I think, because while there are numerous videos and web pages that explain how to identify loops in relationship models. It's actually a non-trivial problem. But so it knows that this is a reinforcing loop. Now suppose I do this and create C and say that this is also same, and create this and say that this is opposite. So that what I've now essentially defined is a limits to growth structure. If I now go and look, it says, okay, this is a reinforcing loop and this is a balancing loop. And I can relabel them. I could call this growth. Growth, and call this limit. Okay. I can then go ahead and say I want to look at this one, or I want to look at this one, or I can do them sequentially and sort of build a story out of the loops as I turn them on piece by piece. And often I don't know how I should tell the story until after I finished it, and I can move these around. Now, I used to assign numbers to my loops, and in Cauzality I no longer need to do that because the numbers are assigned automatically based upon the position I put them in. So this is just, I'm fascinated with this aspect of Cauzality. Now, can I do this in Kumu? Sure. Here's a model that I developed. Well, it's actually somebody else's model that I repurposed because I really liked the way that it told the story about avoiding births and unwanted births and abortions and sex education, so that the pieces are here and I can mouse over it and look at all of these loops individually using something called I don't know, what was it called? It was called I don't remember. I don't know. I forget what it was called. But the thing of it is, I had to personally figure out where the loops were, label them, and identify what connections were actually part of the loop. And just for drill, I took this model and put it in causality, just to see what would happen. Well, what happened was that remember I said I used to sequence the loops, though I continually find that I'd like to change the order of the story, which means my loop sequence is out of sequence with what's in causality, so I don't number them anymore. And I don't indicate whether they're R's or B's because causality knows. The thing that really blew me away was this particular model that when I put it into causality, I found out that there's a whole bunch of loops in here that I was not aware of. So that they're in the Kumu model, they're not labeled, and if I don't know that they exist, I don't know enough to look at them and find out if they actually have a level of dominance that ought to be considered as I'm beginning to understand the set of relationships. And just to give you a sense of the extent to which this goes, if I go to Insight Maker and look at this particular model that I did recently, this is something else that I repurposed from a book called Feedback Economics. This is the simple macroeconomic model. When I put this, I did this in Insight Maker, and I looked at a tool, and Insight Maker said, there are 203 loops in this model. Oh my God. But where are they? Well, they're listed here, but you can't get from here back to the actual diagram without doing it piece by piece. So if I go to causality and find this model, okay, here's that same model implemented in causality, and if you look at it, I haven't labeled any of the loops, but I was comforted and in awe that causality and Insight Maker agree that there are 203 loops in this structure. How the hell one actually sorts out mentally 203 loops is sort of beyond me at the moment, but at least it allows you to quickly identify where they are, which I can't, to do this in Kumu or in Insight Maker is an unbelievable chore. So my hat's off to the programmer who is developing causality, because I'm fascinated by this capability. And I can also go ahead and focus this. If I click on this piece it will bring this into focus. So I can just think about this and not have to think about all the rest of it. Oh, and the other part that might blow your mind is if you mouse over this, notice on the right that it's highlighted loops E, F, G, and K. It tells you all of the loops that this particular element is part of. So I would connect this, and this. If I really wanted to think about inventories, that's what the different things that inventories are part of in terms of loops. So that's why I'm currently relatively fascinated with causality, and I'm developing my models of relationships and their implications in causality at the moment. So hope this hasn't been too long and verbose, but take care. Bye.